the role of an IB MYP coordinator, and you all are most welcome for the Teachers Training Program from Genesis Global School. So delighted to have all of you over here, and we wish it will be a very interactive session, a great learning for all of us. Before I start, to introduce Ms. Delia and ask her to just take on the mic over here. But before that, I'll just give a brief introduction about her. Ms. Dahlia Atabani is the MYP coordinator and design teacher at Genesis Global School, and she'll be taking up the session today on the role of an IB MYP coordinator. She started her journey as an IB educator 7 years ago. Since then, she has worked in schools in Russia and participated in more than 8 IB seminars and hosted a number of professional development sessions for visual arts and design, teachers in MYP and DP. Today, Ms. Delia will speak about the important and much discussed subject of leadership in the MYP. She will highlight the main elements of effective coordination and will emphasize on the skills that an MYP coordinator needs to develop to secure a smooth running process. We thank you for joining this session and hope that you will find it informative and useful in your own practices. Now, I'll just request Ms. Delia, you can take on and start with the session.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lino. I hope I am visible and audible, and I will be sharing the presentation in a second. You'll have to forgive me when my camera is on. I will be looking 2 different ways, one for the presentation, one for the camera, just to double secure that there are no connectivity issues. So once again, thank you, dear participants, for joining. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, whether you are already MYP coordinators or if you're preparing for this incredible, thrilling, and very, very difficult, at times overwhelming journey. We're very happy to welcome you. And supporting me today and assisting me, you have already met the wonderful Miss Linu, who is our design teacher and the go-to wisdom person. And a bit later, we'll have also Miss Momita joining us to help moderate the session. I will try to make it as interactive as possible. So this was not just a learning experience, but also a collaborative experience. So I'm just going to share my screen. Right, so today what we're going to do is we're going to try to achieve the unachievable. We're going to try to fit a conversation about leadership into under an hour. And the reason I mark this task as unachievable to a certain extent is because I feel that such a conversation doesn't really have any borders, if you think of it. It's an ongoing discussion which changes almost like the weather in the mountains. And I guess our ultimate goal as leaders is to try and make this weather as consistent as possible and make its changes, if not seamless, then at least bearable to the members of our community. Now, of course, we will need some guidelines today, and you now see the objective of today's sessions before your screen. But before we discuss them and before I explain them a little bit, I would like to say that the most important objective of this webinar, which I haven't stated due to the fact that it's quite difficult to formulate it adequately, is making this discussion useful, making it informative and applicable to your own practice, and not stating things that would cause even more confusion in your own practice. You see, when I was preparing for this session, I did what any neophyte would do probably in my situation. I Googled, and my search history now is full of these punchlines such as how to be an effective leader in an effective leadership seminar, or how to make leadership a clear concept. And at some point I stopped because I felt that I was falling into the track of what I like to call abstract seminars. You know, these abstract seminars where the information that is collected and conveyed is extremely obvious, very solemn, and lacks any sort of personality or personal connection. There's nothing wrong with these kinds of seminars. Sometimes they provoke us to think about things and look at them in a perspective, from a perspective which we've never thought of looking at them. But when you really try to analyze them, you understand they don't really teach you anything. And if there's anything I learned during my new role as an MYP coordinator, then it is that you have to establish personal connections, especially when you're working in education, because education is completely and utterly all about people. And if you are to host a leadership session, which I'm sure with time all of you might engage in this kind of experience, you want to give out some meaningful advice. This doesn't really mean that the advice you're giving will suit every single person and, as it goes, every single context, but you will share your experience and you will try to alert your audience about certain problems, angles, certain difficulties, and most importantly, the solutions to these difficulties which you found on your own. And I think that's a great place, to start at. And I think that's exactly what I'm going to try to do today. So you see the session objectives before you. First and foremostly and most importantly, of course, we're going to discuss leadership skills and elements of effective coordination, just like Ms. Lino said, for you to further transfer the proposed solutions and this discussion to your own school practices. We will try to reflect on how different leaders in different contexts perceive the concept of leadership, how a specific school environment influences the leadership goals, because we never forget about the national component of any school, be it IB or states or both. We're going to try to establish the universal, quote unquote, points an MYP school must include, regardless of this context. And at the end of the day, again, a thing I think that educational seminars should really provoke and promote even more. We're going to try to establish these cross-school relations. We actually are right now for possible future collaboration. In other words, we're going to try to make friends today, because regardless of the amount of seminars and useful, very knowledgeable resources, I think it's always great to have a couple of educational, professional friendships, which will allow you and give you the leisure and pleasure of addressing people of your own format, of at the same level, with questions that they might have, gone through and problems they might have gone through on a more personal level. So what I would like to start with today is with a quote, which I really like. This is a quote from a wonderful book called Leaders, The Strategies for Taking Charge by Warren Bennis and Bert Nanas. And it goes like, leadership is what gives an organization its vision and its ability to translate that vision into reality. Without this translation, a transaction between leaders and followers, there is no organizational heartbeat. And I think it's very applicable to our practice. But before discussing it in more detail, I would propose a small interactive activity. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try and reflect on this quote. Now on your screens, you will see a QR code, and Ms. Lina will also share the link to the exact same website, and it will direct you to a website where you can generate your word cloud. What I'm going to ask you to do is, if you can kindly have a look at this quote and try to identify one or maybe two words in this quote, which in your opinion define leadership. And maybe if there is any additional word which in your opinion, is essential to leadership, you can also add it to this word cloud. Unfortunately, because we have quite a number of participants, we had to limit the amount of entries to 2. So once you get that link, you will see that you have an opportunity to add these words. I will just show you how it looks. So please start filling in this word cloud and let us see how it will be generating, to see what are the things different people emphasize on. This is how the frame will look like. and let us see what is generating. Okay, wonderful. We have our first entries. Vision, commitment. Let me just open the screen for you also to see the quote, for it to be in front of your eyes. Leadership is what gives an organization its vision and its ability to translate that vision into reality. Without this translation, a transaction between leaders and followers, there is no organizational heartbeat. And I think the best thing about these things and about these quotes, there is no right or wrong answer. So we see vision, heartbeat, also a wonderful word which I really think catches the kind of emotional side of this quote. Empathy, wonderful. Open-minded. It's such a pleasure to see that you're incorporating other words which are as relevant as the ones in this quote. So let us see, maybe we will have some repetition. Don't worry if you will be repeating these words, because this will give us also an understanding of what is maybe more important or more common. Okay, here we are. If you can see it, the word vision is just really popping out of this word cloud.
Miss Delia, can you see there's a very important and very attractive word servant over there?
Definitely,
That's
definitely, definitely. Absolutely. I think it's really great to see how different leaders, I'm sure that we are now joined by leaders from very different parts of our world. And it's wonderful to see the different contributions, but also the fact that a lot of us are looking in the same direction, and not to impose my own point of view on you in any way, because every single word that is now in this word cloud is as important. But I would have to say that yes, vision is also probably the word that caught my attention, and so did heartbeat. So thank you for sharing. Just once again, the QR code. This will be an ongoing word cloud, and we can revisit it at the end. If you have any thoughts which you would like to add, please feel free to do that. It will be active for a couple of days, actually, so you will be able to return to it and have a look at how it goes. Great. Thank you so much for this wonderful interaction. And let us go to the main part of this session, which will be dedicated to skills for effective teamwork. As you know, skill-based teaching and learning is the basis of the IB program. It's what defines it and what makes it different from the majority of educational programs. Moreover, many state programs today are now implementing the same strategies because of how effective they have proven, to be over the years in the pioneering IB. So we're going to discuss a couple of these vital leadership skills. They won't be new to you, but what I'm going to try to do is I will share my developmental experience around the same, and I hope that will be informative to you. But let us start with the definition of leadership per se, or to be more accurate, the difference between leadership and management. I mean, it's almost intuitive, don't you think? In discussing the differences between management and leadership, John Cotter argues that, quote unquote, management is about coping with complexity, whereas leadership, by contrast, is about coping with change. And then, using a military analogy in his study, Cotter stated that no one yet has figured out how to manage people effectively into battle. They must be led, says Cotter. And I think that this military analogy, perhaps, though a bit rougher, it's also more vivid, and it gives you the sense of, that feel of leadership. Just once again, no one yet has figured out how to manage people effectively into battle. They must be led. And, the conclusion, the outcome that I get from this quote is that being a manager is a job, but being a leader is a vocation. And when you're leading a team, it's really easy to get caught up in managing because there are so many things that you need to do. And naturally, at some point, of course, as a leader, you will be having these management responsibilities. But what I find effective is to keep this so-called wake-up call list later on, I will gladly share with you a list of resources, and there are millions of these kinds of lists, that compare managers to leaders. And I don't want this, to be too imperative or too strict. As I said, naturally, we do take part of the responsibilities from each graph. But what helps me when I am in doubt and when I think, oh my God, am I too much of a manager, or how can I still stay a leader in this situation? What I do is I try to go with this list, right? So for example, focus on people rather than focus on things, in the sense that when I'm having a difficult or challenging task, or I need something to do, the first thing I prefer to do is focus on the people. Who is working on this task? Have I spoken to them directly? Have I created a comfortable environment for the people first and foremostly? And then from here on, I found these small opposing verbs, opposing actions, which I find are quite effective, as in motivate rather than direct, innovate rather than organize. My favorite two are seek responsibility and from here calculate risks. This doesn't mean that as a leader, your one and only responsibility is to just get into that risk and jump off a cliff on a daily basis. But I think this gives us an understanding of the difference of approach that leaders have. And another thing that I have come, to know and to understand and to believe when looking at these comparisons is that a leader definitely has not just the capacity, but the responsibility of being a manager at times. But a manager does not always have the capacity to be a leader. And I think that is why we're in such a wonderful, place to be leaders, because it gives us this wonderful sense of collaboration and communication. I feel that I have been speaking a lot now, and what I would like to do is I would like to share a video by a survey agency called Thales, which is called "What Does Effective Leadership Look Like in Schools?" So I'm just going to let some really smart and experienced people speak, just also to mark the points that we had on management versus leadership and prepare us for the next section on skills.
So as a leader, I ensure that I lead, I guide, I monitor, and I support.
Portanto, eu como diretor, e de acordo também com a legislação, o diretor é um bocadinho de tudo, não é? Tem que dar resposta a uma parte administrativa e a uma parte pedagógica.
There are plenty of responsibilities, actually many of them. One very important one is employee management. Another one is quality management, staff development in general, acquisition of teaching materials, organizing the budget for it. What I spend most time on is problem solving on a daily basis.
I've got the departmental heads, I've got the deputy principal, where I make sure that they've got their functions and they lead according to their functions. And as the principal, I monitor their processes and progresses so that the school develops.
Wat betreft het medezeggenschap is het belangrijk dat elke leerkracht het gevoel heeft dat hij zijn school meemaakt. Dat niet is de directeur die een aantal ideeën heeft, die hij oplegt, die nadien door leerkrachten moeten uitgevoerd worden. Nee, het is belangrijk de leerkracht een stem te geven in de ideeën die de school straks gaat realiseren.
I involve the teachers in many aspects, actually, in decision-making aspects, acquiring teaching materials, what kind of computers to buy.
Hay dos
pilares importantes, ¿no es cierto? En la parte clima, que involucraría el liderazgo de los profesores en el aula también, y el fortalecer liderazgo entre los profesores, y la parte pedagógica, de no salir del foco del aprendizaje de los niños.
On a instauré une heure bleue où tout le monde est disponible et c'est à ce moment-là qu'on se retrouve pour échanger. Ces heures de bleu, ça nous sert à réfléchir ensemble, progresser ensemble. Et moi, je me mets sur un pied d'égalité avec les enseignants. Donc, on échange facilement parce qu'on est des collègues de travail.
Mä ajattelen, että mä rehtorina on se mahdollistaja, että luon juurikin niitä tilanteita ja tilaisuuksia, missä voidaan yhteisesti suunnitella ja sitten ennen kaikkea tietenkin juurikin kannustan siihen, että lähdetään vaan ilman muuta kokeilemaan.
So I don't know whether you have been jotting down some of the points for yourselves or whether you have been paying attention to some of the specific pieces of information. I collected it for you together, and mainly the most common things that we heard were things like problem solving, cooperation, collaboration, monitoring, supporting in decision making, giving the autonomy. But the most important thing for me, and that's something I think we can start with all together, is the fact that according to OECD TALIS, 98% of the teachers and the schools that participated in this survey said that, and principals mostly, said that they involve teachers in participation and in decision making, and that 90% of them do feel this extreme autonomy when it comes to so many different areas of responsibility. And therefore, let us move to discussing the skills. And the first question here is, and I invite you to raise your hand and share your experience. I will share my answer just in a minute. So what do you do to secure effective communication and collaboration in your school? Or perhaps if you're just starting the journey to MYP or as an MYP leader, what would you do to secure effective communication and collaboration in your school? Please, Ms. Lina, if you can assist, you can raise your hands, dear participants, and just unmute yourselves and answer once Ms. Lina calls out your name, or you can write in the chat box and we will gladly read your answers. Please.
We are welcome to anyway. If you are comfortable in chatting in the chat box, that's very good for us. We'll read out your part. But in case you wish to share it in the discussion forum right now, it's open to you. Yeah. Just give me a raise hand option. I'll be choosing you in.
So what do you do to secure effective communication and collaboration in your school? Any practice?
Dahlia, we have Sanjeevni. You can just take on, Sanjeevni. Unmute yourself, yeah.
Please.
Yes. So, hi, this is Sanjeevni. And one of the practice which I used was in the beginning of the year during teacher orientation. Every year we do this, like we have teachers reflecting on the school mission statement, and we share our own teaching philosophies, and we try to tie our teaching philosophies with the school mission statement and obviously the IB mission statement, just to ensure that we are on the same page of what is the vision we have, and does our vision as a teacher matches with the vision of our school. So this is what we do.
Thank you so much for sharing. And this is an amazing practice because the mission statement is such a great source for inspiration. And by doing that, you really ensure that the teachers are not just working on some kind of abstract goal which was given to them by a gigantic organization, but you're actually inviting them to help develop a mission statement that resonates with them. And you basically ask for their advice, which is a wonderful thing to do. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else would like to meet?
Delia, there are a few more in the chat box. If we can just go through them. Rima says that, give more autonomy to teachers. So, okay. And we also have give choice and voice to all. Taking constant feedback at regular intervals. Okay. Okay. Yeah, there is again very important two words. Amani said that creativeness, growth.
Absolutely, absolutely. All these answers are absolutely on spot. And if you feel like continuing, please contribute in the chat box. We will gladly go, through these answers. But for me, I absolutely agree with everything that has been said. For me, I guess one of the most important things here is I create a space for meaningful collaboration to take place, because all our teachers are incredible professionals, and there is no doubt that every single one of them has at least one, though I think it's much more than one, but still, at least one great idea and great way to contribute to the learning. So our role and our responsibility as a leader is to create this space and to kind of savor and collect all these amazing ideas in one space. And the thing is that when I joined Genesis as an MYP coordinator, I asked myself a couple of questions, which really helped us as a community shape our collaboration in the way it is. And I will share it in a second, what we do. So the first thing I asked myself, and the team, of course, because it's not like I do something and then I just direct the team with whatever decision I made. So the first question is, are your collaboration sessions meaningful? Like really meaningful? Because very often we see that every single school has a collaborative meeting, but it just doesn't seem to work. And the best way for me, I believe here, is to start by trying to analyze what isn't working. Why? Sometimes you might see that there are two collaborative sessions. Sometimes, on the contrary, there is just one or two, but you have too much miscellaneous information packed into that one meeting, and you have teachers who are just, absolutely tired and in constant distress because of the amount of information they have to deal with. So the first suggestion here, an effective strategy, would be to have a clear differentiation and a system, a protocol, if you will, on how you divide your meetings and what meeting is created for what purpose. And as I said, I will provide some examples further. The next question I asked myself was, am I sure that I know everything? And by this question, what I mean is, am I sure that my colleagues trust me enough and feel safe enough to discuss any possible issues with me as a leader, as a teacher, as a person even? Because, a leader has so many different nuanced roles, as I like to call them. So when I asked myself this question, I started reflecting on my past experience when I wasn't an MYP coordinator and when I felt that, I might be kind of reluctant to share some of the ideas. I started to ask myself why. And the answer here is quite often some schools, even the most progressive ones, might start practicing an authoritarian management style without even knowing it. And to me, one of the most vivid evidences that this is happening is when there is a very strict hierarchy which is followed and which starts to kind of place the teachers into this extremely strict environment where they refer only to the things that are kept in the area of their responsibility. Surely, we all have roles, and our areas of responsibility are very important. But to build this kind of effective communication, we really need to ensure that our colleagues feel free and confident enough to step out of these areas and sometimes be the risk takers and go forward and generate, brainstorm some ideas outside of what we would call the official area of their responsibilities and their official role. And last but not least, of course, a question that I'm sure as IB teachers you have been, and coordinators and leaders, you have been asking yourselves and your students, your staff members constantly: are you lifelong learners? Because from my experience, the best collaboration always happens during learning. And the best thing about learning is that it has this amazing unifying feature to it. It doesn't matter whether you're all a group of extreme professionals, or you have newcomers and old veterans, or you have young children and grown-ups. It doesn't matter. When you're learning, you are placed into that thrilling environment of not knowing something and trying to get to the end point of knowledge together through this incredibly creative process. So another thing, another piece of friendly and professional advice: make sure that you and your colleagues have access to BD sessions, more specifically PD sessions outside of your school, so that you were placed into the same environment as your colleagues, because this gives us perspective. And very, very, very quickly, I would just like to go through how we have managed and differentiated the collaborative sessions in our school at Genesis. So we basically divided them into several sections. First, we have process collaboration, something which is well known to all teachers from years and years and years ago. This isn't an innovation in the IB, right? So we have, for example, lesson planning sessions, department meetings. The only thing that I would propose doing differently, if you haven't done that already, when you have a group of teachers who are teaching in the same subject in the same year, but across different sections, it might be a really good idea for them to plan out these lessons collaboratively. I know for some schools this goes without saying, but for some this is still a surprise. Of course, it can be tricky in terms of schedule, but when you have this opportunity of different teachers sort of doing the same thing, sitting together and actually analyzing, are they really doing it in the same way, and how can they differentiate even in each class? This gives you a whole new quality to your inquiry-based classes. And I feel that this really helps your teachers, on the one hand, be on one track in terms of the curricula and the action plan, which you as a leader also have to monitor. But at the same time, if a teacher gets into a tricky situation with one class, the other teachers can give them that meaningful advice of how to dive out of that situation. Because at the end of the day, even if you have 1 year with different sections, they're still all very different children. Our next kind of scope of meetings is the so-called program collaboration. So this is something that happens specifically to your program, in our case, the MYP. So we've settled down with a once a week kind of coordinator meeting with the team, and of course it's completely up to you on how long this will happen, when this will happen. In our experience, we found that there is nothing that we cannot fit into 15 minutes in terms of burning points, agenda, important developments, which then is followed by a Q&A session where we actually invite the teachers to discuss any possible issues individually. Of course, this is different if you are a new MYP school, because you will need these meetings to be longer. You might look into some details of documentation, of MYP planning. So as I said, I'm just giving you an image of how we do it in our school, but it's completely up to you to, alter these suggestions and see how they work in your school. And last but not least, of course, the so-called educational collaboration. Professional development sessions are so important, and they come in so many different levels, because you have the general meeting with, let's say, the program, or actually working with different groups, because sometimes we would have an exclusively MYP PD session, sometimes it would be a whole school, by the way, including our members of different other programs. the CBSE, which is the Indian state program, the IGCSE, that can be a very, very interesting experience. Don't be afraid to kind of connect these programs, because sometimes we see that schools get so defensive, in the sense that this is IB, this is state's program. Why not give your teachers the opportunity to actually be open-minded? After all, that's what we're teaching our students to be. So as a coordinator, as a leader, it's a great idea to experiment with these groups, be it absolutely, nailed down to subject teachers, or you're trying to have a teacher from each subject group being in one group. This is where, as leaders, we can have a lot of fun and just witness the amazing outcomes of this situation, especially if we're speaking about interdisciplinary units. And here, of course, I will share this link in the end, at the end of this meeting, with the effective resources. This is a wonderful link to School Reform Initiative with the protocols. I've actually, taken that from my own MYP training seminar. Basically what it is, it's a compilation of different activities and different ways to perform interesting learning sessions, because of course, I don't know how many of you have returned to the offline basis. Here at Genesis and MYP, we're still pretty much online based. So of course, we are a little bit limited to Padlet, to word clouds, to online groups and channels and teams. But if you are already offline and you have this opportunity to experiment with these playful but really effective strategies, I will gladly share this link with you with these protocols. And of course, last but not least, in terms of educational collaboration, is professional orientation. You want to ensure that when a new teacher joins your team, they get the opportunity to catch up with how things are done in your school. And here, two very important lines for you as leaders would be action plans and inductions. Action plans are essentially your way of organizing the agenda for all the upcoming educational events. And basically, this is a space where you can tell yourself and decide where would you like to find your schools in, and then you place the time in half a year, in a year, in 5 years. Well, nobody thinks that far nowadays, but still. And this action plan also will help you later on with any further more technical documents such as budgeting and so on. So the action plan is essential. And then the induction can be an amazing thing where you as a leader incorporate the most important points from the MYP program, but also add that the feeling of your own school. Just as one of our speakers was saying about this amazing initiative with discussing the mission statement, this can easily be like a starting tradition for an induction. In terms of collaboration, that's about it. But what happens next? With all the collaboration going on, how do I find time for anything else? Maybe you have some suggestions. How do you organize the time? What do you do for your colleagues not to feel so overwhelmed by the collaboration going on? Or maybe if you can share, do you feel that at times there is just too much collaboration, much more than sometimes we feel than teaching or actually getting some rest? Please, I would love to hear some answers, some thoughts on the subject. With all the collaboration going on, how do we find time for anything else? You can raise your hands or place your entries in the chat box, whichever is more comfortable for you.
Even for the, yeah, we are open to it. And even for the earlier point, how your school is collaborating, we will love to hear about that too. We have Nina. Nina, you can just share your thoughts, dear. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. When we have a lot of collaboration, in fact, we can use this to our advantage, because during our collaborative time, we can allot the work and define everyone's responsibility in a particular area of work. So, in that way, what happens is when we are collaboratively, for example, when we are looking at MYP 1, 2, 3, whatever. So during the collaboration, we say, okay, this one is handling MYP 1, We have a kind of a brainstorming session, and then everyone puts in their ideas, and the one person is handling MYP1, and so on. So this actually helps in assisting, allotting work and also kind of channelizing the work in a better manner.
Absolutely. I think that's just an amazing way to deal with that. So, not just having this wave of collaboration going on, but actually treating it very logically and structurizing. And my answer here would be please continue with any answers in the chat box. We would love to return to them later on. What we do is, like, I think that the best way here is to prioritize and plan in accordance with what is relevant to your school's needs. And I'm mimicking what Nina just said. Absolutely. So planning and organizing, it's something when you take this job, it sort of goes without saying, but then people forget how difficult it actually can be when you're handling such an enormous program which deals with so many levels of responsibilities, roles, things, people, and of course, when you structure your leading, your learning, your PD sessions, the whole process, and actually the multiple processes that are going on in your PD sessions, that is a great key way to take and to kind of dial down the level of this overwhelming experience and burning out. And the things I feel like I like to focus on when I'm structuring and organizing on what I do is I like to organize my clear mission statement. And why I do that is because when I return to it, I always kind of remind myself what we're doing here, and not just to myself, but to this amazing team of teachers. As stated just a couple of minutes ago, of course, we need to plan the school's action plan and protocol procedures, because it's impossible to come up with a new creative way for a batch of same things, ideas, and so on. So you like, it's a good thing when you, especially to those who are just getting started with the MYP, you will need to alter these protocols anyway, and things will be coming up. But if you sit down and decide, okay, this is how I'm going to deal with these types of issues, events, problems, this will make life a lot easier. We lead the planning of short and long-term event calendars, and event calendars actually can be a wonderful way to, we will speak about that later, delegate any kind of responsibility. So if you have a series of assemblies, at the beginning of the month, straight away decide who will be taking over what kind of event. I know, once again, this sounds obvious, but often when we're just at the beginning of our journey, we kind of forget about that because there's, once again, so many things to do. You can create yourself a checklist and just, every month or every week, whichever suits you best, you can go over this checklist. We organize clear communication, as we have spoken of. We organize and plan ongoing procedures related to teacher performance observation. And as I said, we will get into that a bit later in the elements of effective coordination. And we organize a strong team of professionals. I know that if it were as easy as it sounds, probably never would we have an issue. But still, I believe this is a skill. Like, if it's a skill, it means this is something we can learn to do by practicing. So how do we avoid conflicts and problems in the scenario when we have so many people, so many roles, so many groups of people? What are your suggestions? What are your insights? Or perhaps you would like to share any overwhelming experiences regarding the same. So how do we avoid conflicts or problems? Does anyone have any tip, maybe suggestion, insights to the same? Miss Lino, please.
Yeah, I'll just see there's you can even use chat box, and right now also if anybody is wanting to share on it.
I guess we need to reformulate this question. Has anyone ever managed to avoid conflicts or problems?
Or either it can be also the miscommunications while we are collaborating and making the communications between a team, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Anybody who wishes to just pitch in, or either if we can just ask somebody from here, how do you prefer doing it? We have over here Momita with us. She's okay. We'll come to you, Sanjeevni, just a minute. Before that, if we can talk to Momita and if she can share something with us.
Please, how do you avoid any conflicts if possible, Ms. Momita?
Okay, then I think she's not able, might be some issue. We'll move on to Sanjeevni. Yes, please share, dear.
So I feel like conflicts are a part of life. What we teach our children, I think we teachers also have to learn that. So in the beginning of the year itself, we set the tone and we come up with our essential agreements. And we always talk about if there is a problem, so how do we deal with it? So these are some of the questions we keep on posing to the staff during orientation and say, okay, if there's a problem, the best way to solve is to talk directly to the person involved in it rather than talking behind the person's back, and just like have this ability to communicate not as a complaint but as a feedback. So this is what I feel, and this is what, and giving that specific feedback sometimes helps the team members to work on whatever shortcomings or whatever things which might lead to a problem. So I think having those communication lines open always, and to understand how to help teachers express their disappointments or disagreements in a way which will still keep the team together and will help them to improve. I think that happens in the very beginning of the year. If you set the tone and if you develop the culture of giving and receiving meaningful feedback, I think conflicts will be easy to resolve. Not that we can avoid them, but at least if they arise, we'll be able to resolve those.
This is
Yeah.
yeah, amazing, approach to
Yes.
that. Of course, the speaker who we have been listening to, I'm sorry, I didn't get the name. Obviously,
Sanjeev.
yes, Sajib, thank you. Obviously possesses some intense psychological skills, and I would love to have a seminar on that, because obviously as leaders we also have to be kind of tuning in to the psychological aspect of our work. Before we continue, Miss Lena, maybe there are any
Yes, we
more
have in
answers?
chat box. Yeah, we have in chat box very good points, and some were related to what Sanjeevni said, but we can take on being transparent and impartial to people helps. Yes, it does. And by being clear, providing thorough and detailed expectations or instructions, or even if I share up, because I and Delia being a part of a same team of design, and we do have three other members with us in our team. So if we talk about that, what Sanjeevni said, that works a lot. We are always open to, and wherever we don't go along with the thought, we there itself ask the question to clarify it, like I'm not able to connect to it, please explain me again. Okay, and we are so open to all these thoughts that none of us feel bad whenever we are working as if we are working as students over there in a team, and we try to learn from each other and understand the other's perspective. So that is what I think, when you make your colleagues your friends, at that moment it helps a lot to connect to what they are thinking. Or even if you disagree, you're very open to them to ask their what they mean by it, or either why they're wanting this way to be done. And then you will understand, or either they will understand, they will also not feel bad about it, why you disagree. So it's more of where you need to connect very openly, very frank, as it's written that being transparent is very important with your colleagues and while you're communication and collaborating on some issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. And all these points are completely on point. I do, however, feel that my answer will be somewhat of a disappointment, because my answer is you don't. Uh, in the sense that, as some of the speakers have been saying, it is inevitable. Conflicts, problems can happen in such a complex group, in such a complex environment. But if we're speaking, everything that has been discussed now is absolutely correct. But when we're looking at it from a leader's point of view, very early on, my experience showed me that problems are actually very good, because problems, real meaningful problems, can and actually must be perceived as a wonderful opportunity for you as a leader to identify the points for your development, the areas of your decisions that might have gone wrong, the weak areas. And when we analyze as leaders, I'm kind of stressing this point, not just as team members, but as leaders, as coordinators, when we analyze the factors that might have led us and our team to these problems, of course, the most important thing we should do and develop this as a problem-solving skill is to make that valuable amendment to any part of our strategy or to the strategies in general, for us to ensure that we are back on track. I remember my teacher used to say, there is an error and there is a mistake. When you have an error, you just need to make a small correction to the angle you're headed in, and you go forward. But when it's a mistake, sometimes you just need to turn 180 degrees, accept that, and go forward. So at times our problems might be like small errors, at times they might be huge mistakes. But our job as a leader is to take any experience as positive, useful experience. Not to repeat what our speakers have been saying, our participants, yes, problems should be discussed and conflict is inevitable because our school, as I said, is a complex organism. And I guess as leaders, we will not always be able to prevent these conflicts, but we should work on maintaining that wonderful balance where, again, we create a space for our team where the team feels confident enough and safe enough to come forward and discuss this problem clearly and openly. And last but not least, we're a little bit limited on time, though we did start a bit later, but still, when we feel overwhelmed, just imagining all these things that need to be done, how do we cope? If we can have some answers in the chat box, I will share some of our experience and then we will read out your suggestions and the way you do things. So how do we cope with this emotional distress, which of course, and burnout, which can occur? Our solution at Genesis is to focus on our teams and our own mental health. And this applies to everyone, to teachers, to students, to parents even, and of course, to your own self. I love this thing that you hear every time on the plane. In case of an emergency, please place the mask firstly over your face and then assist others. And emotional well-being, I think it's the talk of 2020, especially, considering these challenging COVID lockdown times. So what does your school do to support the community's mental health? Well, in our case, we started with a very simple spread the word. We started speaking about this as a problem, and as a problem we would like to avoid, as a problem we acknowledge. And we also spoke about our readiness to help any member of the community. In our case, we had the leisure of hiring an EQ and emotional intelligence team who actually started working with our students. They had sessions with students where they would discuss such important things like emotional burnout, self-acceptance. They identified and learned how to deal with emotions, both your own and other people's, dealing with peer pressure. But sometimes a school does not have the resources just yet or ever. That depends on the school, on whether it's a big school or a small school, the budget, and it doesn't have to necessarily be an emotional intelligence team. We also incorporated these discussions during our assemblies. And at some point, I had no experience within these subjects. I started looking into this topic, reading articles. I'm sure any teacher has a psychologist friend or a counselor who can help arrange these assemblies. And at the end of the day, you'll be surprised at how intuitive our children are. They are so much more emotionally prepared and psychologically advanced than any of the generation, I'm sure, that is now present with us, because they actually are growing up surrounded by the conversation on these topics. right? So one of the most amazing assemblies we had was when a group of our MYP3, which is grade 8 students, organized an assembly which was dedicated to how social media affects your self-awareness and self-esteem. It was such an inquisitive and gentle and beautiful session. So as teachers, you can encourage, and as leaders, of course, you can encourage your team to try spreading the word and raising awareness to this important issue. And also, don't forget about the staff. In our case, we had a wonderful series of initiatives when we actually had our colleagues assist 4 colleagues. So it kind of was a mutual deed when we had teachers getting involved in yoga or learning how to draw with our arts teacher. And, you know, sometimes all it takes to release this kind of pressure is just to take your mind off things and try to engage in a different activity. And again, look at your colleagues from a completely different perspective. And kind of this, again, as a leader, a big thing for us is to unify our team, not just on a professional, but on a personal level as well. Ms. Lena, do we have any entries in the chat box regarding the same? How do our participants deal with affective skills?
Yeah, Rima has shared that one should plan out sessions for both teachers and students to vent out, share their ideas and viewpoints. And basically, the sessions on self-love, that is very important when we talk about emotional intelligence. So yes, as we are being doing that in Genesis too, and hopefully if all of you must be having some or the other kind of sessions for your teachers, and especially as Delia said that pandemic time has made this a very important aspect of our day-to-day life. We need to have these sessions in our schools regularly, so that it we also are taking care of the well-being of everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to sum up this skill section, and we're actually quite near, the end of our session, Miss Lena will also provide this once again with the link to Padlet, or you can scan the QR code you see if you're comfortable with using Padlet from your phone. This link, as I said, will lead you to a Padlet board where you will see 4 columns repeating the skills which we have discussed. So this is kind of a small recap of what we were speaking. And if some of you didn't have the opportunity to interact with us or would like to share some of your practices, please use this Padlet. It will be open after the session as well, and I will gladly return and comment, and you can comment on each other's entries, because I think that's how we can build this cross-school culture and cross-school relationship. So you will see this board with the 4 columns, and I have placed some guided questions. You can follow them or just answer your own. For example, how do you and your team develop some of the skills that we have mentioned, and what skills do you and your team focus on more? Maybe what practices discussed in this session would you like to try out in your school? I'm just going to open the Padlet also next to me. It's here. Once again, the link, it will be provided, I believe already is provided by Miss Lena in the chat box.
It's there.
Or you can scan. I will see all the changes being added. Maybe we can have a couple of entries to discuss, and then we will move forward. But please feel free to return to this board. It will be open for a whole 2 weeks. So we can return and just, exchange thoughts, exchange practices, experiences, because at the end of the day, no matter how smart the suggestions might be, I think the best suggestions are the ones, and the best solutions are the ones that have actually been tested. So please feel free to make your entries now. In communication and collaboration skills, some of the guided questions are: how well is your collaborative process organized? What are the strong features of your PD sessions, in your opinion, as a leader? Do you think you are a good communicator, and why? And is your team a team of good communicators? And what, as I said, what ideas here did you find interesting? In planning and organizing, what, in your opinion, constitutes an effectively organized school? What are your personal tips when it comes to effective organizing and planning? Just please feel free to share any relevant thoughts on the subject. problem solving. How did you solve a difficult conflict or problem? Maybe you would like to give us some specifics, of course, without mentioning the details, but still any solutions, any good protocols you might have come across. And of course, in effective skills, why do you think effective skills are important in a leader, and how would you choose to develop them? I'm just going to open this Padlet board to see maybe we have already had some entries. Okay. Okay, wonderful. We have a really interesting entry. I hope you can see my screen, those who might be experiencing some connectivity issues. Using ladder of feedback for lesson observations. Class observation can be stressful for teachers. Hence, using the ladder of feedback helps teachers see this practice as an important step in their own learning rather than a stressful thing. Absolutely. And I think that lesson observations, this is something that comes from the past when I don't know what program you are coming from. I actually come from a post-Soviet program, which was actually a Soviet program, where lesson observations were this strict, almost kind of demonstrative parade-like event. And the main aim was just to scare everyone and have everyone on their best behavior. And quite often, I remember as a student, actually, not even as a leader or a teacher, but as a student, I thought, oh my God, they have so little to do with our actual process. And I think it's great that we have this kind of shift in the mindset regarding lesson observations. And as our entire leadership team, including, by the way, our heads of departments, have made it a point to ensure that our lesson observations are first and foremostly to give some meaningful feedback, not to scold or scare or overwhelm the teacher, but give that feedback to help the teacher grow. So I think this is absolutely correct regarding the ladder feedback. And I think that there should be this shift in the mindset that lesson observations are just one of the many elements of professional development, right? And also another thing that can help you is when subject teachers, be it in one subject group or in different subject groups, attend these meetings and just use the practices. So you can always, as a leader, advise a certain teacher to attend another teacher's class, say, you know, he really does this and this really well, or try, you know, implementing something like this. And this can help also dial down, once again, the level of seriousness. Please feel free to add to this Padlet as we will be moving forward. And last but not least, we're almost, you know, at the end of our presentation. I would just like to very quickly summarize everything we have been talking about in terms of elements of effective coordination in the MYP. So the responsibilities of an MYP coordinator are shared, of course, with you individually by your schools, by your HRs, but there are some points that impact, you know, your leadership style directly, and which I think if we share, they will be quite universal to every teacher, right? So we determine direction in which the school is headed in terms of morale and culture. We practice high visibility. I love this concept. Lead by walking, again by Baron. You know, not just because I think this image of a coordinator who is sitting in his office is something that has died off a long time ago. So when we lead by walking around, we actually show that we are on the same level. We are part of this team. In no way, again, returning to the conversation of hierarchy. Ensure that the MYP in your school meets the standards of the IB, and this is something that can be done through documentation. Create an effective, what we like to call smart budget, and keep the documentation clear. And please take the advice and help of your heads of IB, of your colleagues, coordinators, because a budget can be a very tricky thing, and there's absolutely nothing wrong in not knowing how to do that at the beginning. Just again, returning to the action plan, state your priorities, and this will give you a very clear understanding of what you want to push forward in terms of the budget, but what can wait. Ensure and encourage open and effective communication and collaboration. We have spoken about that a lot. And once again, action plan, inductions, professional development sessions, create them, lead them, nurture them. In terms of the next element, clear directions and goals. Again, I feel that this is something that doesn't need extra explanation, but as we said at the very beginning, it's a very long program, so you need to ensure that the directions are kind of it's the same direction throughout all the 5 years. You cannot afford changing the mission statement, changing the ideas, changing the culture every year. This is something that has to be consistent for you to receive a smart kind of lifelong learning batch of students. Clear mission statement, positive school culture. Another very important thing for you as a leader, if you are generating an initiative that works in the MYP, it can be a great idea to offer it to the other programs. For example, we have a wonderful thing which is called the Learner Profile Awards. We were thinking about how we would like to develop our learner profile qualities, right? And of course, in unit planning, in teaching, all our teachers are aware of that and they do the best they can. But we wanted our students, to really feel the importance and the reality of the learner profile quality. So what we did is we organized something which is called an event, which is called the Learner Profile Awards, which happens once a month. We collect the teachers' entries. They nominate certain students for certain learner profile qualities, and then it's just this amazing assembly where the students are on the edge of the seat, just thinking, oh my god, did I make it to during this event, during this award season? So if that's something that you might like and you might like to try and do, you can offer it in your school and then see whether or not it plays well in PYP and in the DP. Clear instructions to every members of the team. Ensure that the students coming from MYP are better prepared for DP than those from a non-IB program. That's a very difficult thing, and it can't be. I feel we can have a whole session dedicated to this, but this again comes down to having a great team of professionals whom you trust and following the kind of the main pillars of the MYP. And last but not least, set realistic goals, because often as leaders we kind of plan a whole set of things. Let us try, again, coming down to the action plan, to keep our goals realistic. Last set of elements would deal, of course, with the delegation, with staff management, giving people a chance for growth, allowing for PD opportunities, being prompt with inductions, lessons, observations. I feel that we have already discussed these things. And another thing which is so difficult to discuss, I'm sure that it's difficult for everyone, regarding the necessity of removing poor performers. This is something I have not come, close to even now, though I understand that sometimes, it might be time to say goodbye. I offer you a quote by Les Stein from a wonderful study called Schools Need Leaders, Not Managers. It's time for a paradigm shift. And he says, teachers that do not meet acceptable performance negatively impact the school's morale and undermine its culture. And I feel that the most important thing here is to have a very honest conversation with yourself and then with the teacher, and ask yourself whether you have given this person a good series, actually, of chances for growth, for professional development, whether or not you have supported him. We have a wonderful initiative which is called improvement plans. When we see that the teacher is struggling, we invite him to be part of the improvement plan, and a coordinator or a head of department works with that teacher, attends his lessons. This is the only person who does the lesson observations, not to overwhelm that teacher, shares interesting resources, asks the teacher to share his doubts, concerns, worries. So it's almost like this psychological session that also gives you a lot of great resources. And only then, if you feel that, yeah, I have done everything and the school has done everything possible, that might be time to say goodbye if nothing changes. Conflict management, already discussed, establishing contact with your colleagues, ensuring that the micro teams you create work in sync. That's actually also very important, because at times we have a situation where people from one subject group can be, not quite compatible with one another. This can be observed and identified during your in-school PD sessions, and then you might think of, looking into some emotional intelligence team building sessions, which is as important in education as anywhere. And to finish here, I would say that if a conflict gets out of hand, you can always involve the HR department, consulting with them, learning from them, and at the end of the day, if it's just very difficult, delegating to them. Our session has come to an end. Thank you so much for staying with us for this long. Sorry that we have started a bit later and made this session a bit longer than planned. Thank you so much for your amazing answers, for your participation. I will really be looking forward to seeing some entries in the Padlet board. And if you would like to receive an e-certificate of attendance and get that list of resources that we were talking about, please follow this link because it will lead you to the survey form, and Ms. Lena will share the link in the chat box if you're working from a computer. And this survey form will really help us identify the areas in which we might need to improve if we need to, or whether you like this session or not. So a learning experience for us as well. And also it will ask you to leave your name and your email. So if that's something you would like to do, we would be really grateful to get some feedback. If you don't want to leave your email or your name and you want to keep it like relatively anonymous, you can just write in the chat box your thoughts, your feedback, whether you felt this session helped you to any extent. And I really, really, really thank you for joining me today on a rightful weekend Sunday. And I would like to leave you with the quote, "The strength of the team is each individual member, but the strength of each member is the team." And I think this applies beautifully to education. If you have any questions or you would like to discuss something, that would be absolutely amazing. I would love to collaborate with you in this Q&A session and pass my experience if it is at all relevant. Thank you.
You can even post the questions in the chat box. We can take it from there too. Or either also you're free to just raise your hand. I'll get you in.
And I'm
if
going
you have
to
any sort of question.
The camera on finally to see.
Yeah.
Ms. Wadoui, would you like to add anything maybe to the kind of ending of this session?
Well, I would like just to add one word. There would be a need of a lot more sessions to have this kind of interesting collaboration happen. And no books, no theories or whatever can really help people become real leaders. And we know that leaders are not the people who are educated to be leaders, but are the people who are somehow leaders in heart. And then there is this whole enthusiasm to become a really good leader, to look into areas that you need to develop. And sometimes what I have seen in my career is that often coordinators do not think that they need to be leaders. They think, as you clearly mentioned, they need to be managers. And it goes like hierarchy, working from the bottom to the end. And believe me, it never works effectively. Both the coordinator and teachers should be very freely communicating, being able to trust each other. And I do see that important part of the further hierarchy, I would say, for principals, heads, and directors as well. I do have the belief only through trustful communication and one-to-one care being shown to the other people would be the base for having a successful program or showing the students what real learning is, what kind of people they need to be. Because if you as a leader start being a manager, students do notice this, how you talk to your teachers, how you refer to them, and these things are becoming really important models for student learning. If you're leading an assembly where your teachers are your top priority and you thank them for everything, this is noticed by your students and they start value the teachers the same way that you do. That's it.
Absolutely, and to also to add on to what Ms. Wadui said, I've when I just joined the IB, I was overwhelmed with what a small world it actually is. Because looking into the chat section, I see so many friends. I see also Miss Leila Muniro, with whom we actually went through the learning session together. We had a wonderful facilitator, Catherine, and it's just so delightful to see these people come back. And I think that through this we can really establish these wonderful lasting connections, and why not collaboration on a school level. So I think it's always great to see and to communicate, and as I think communicate and collaborate are the words I'm using so much today. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, when we were undergoing this training, our facilitator always said that the IB is really trying to shift that mindset of IRC, saying that it's all about collaborating on every single level. There should not be a situation where a teacher feels that it's not his place to go to the principal or to the coordinator to discuss. There is no strictness whatsoever in this scheme in the IB in terms of communication. It comes down to the roles and responsibilities, surely, but other than that, I think it's so amazing that we have the opportunity to seek everyone's contribution. And just as a genesis, I would like to say that so many initiatives which sort of are passed by the coordinator's idea are actually ideas that have come from the amazing teachers and the amazing team of Genesis. And I'm just often there to eavesdrop, and see that, okay, this is an indication that we might need this, and here we might need this. And it's just really, really, I think, effective when you have that connection with your team. It won't happen straight away. It can be pretty overwhelming, both for the leader and for the staff, especially, when you're in a situation that I find myself in. I'm working in an Indian school online from Russia. That's a handful for both sides. But I think at the end of the day, communication does get us a long way. So thank you so much I'm seeing some amazing responses in the chat box, and I'm so happy that you found this session somewhat effective. And definitely we would gladly send you the certificate and the recording. Just keep us provide us with your name and with your email. We see that you have done that, and we would definitely share all our resources. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Delia. And once again, a reminder that if you haven't filled the survey form, please do it. The links are provided in the chat box. You can just check in. Even they are in multiple. Delia has also posted it. I have also done it. They're the same form link. You can just go and fill it up in case you haven't done. It will be really easier for us to have all the things in place, the email IDs, the name and everything. And definitely we will be sharing the recordings, as many of you have requested for it. We will be doing it. And it's so grateful to see that you all have found it somewhat relevant and informative for you. She's very good as a head. She's there with me, and as a friend, we will say, because she's always open up to all the suggestions or to hear what is our perspective. And that's why I can say she is very good enough to be seated there to guide or either share with her, all of us, what are her practices and how she takes up this role of leadership. So it's always like what she's saying, she also displays. So thank you so much, Delia, for sharing such a detailed, presentation with us. It was very informative, in fact, for others, and we are getting so many good inputs from the others also in the chat box. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your point of views, for being vocal and interactive. And please do share with us in the form any more suggestions you want to give on how to work on this section, or are there any more presentation sessions you want. So any other topic you want to get to discuss on, please do share all that information in the form. So we are always open to it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for today's session.
Miss Lena, sorry to interrupt. I see that there is an idea, an initiative to form a group of leaders for future collaboration, be it on Telegram or WhatsApp. Let's do this. I will form an email, like a send out to everyone, and then we will see what platform is more comfortable for whom. I can do both Telegram and WhatsApp, and that would be great, you know, to keep our resources together, even if it will be just a sharing platform to share our practices, to come up with interesting collaborative ideas. Absolutely, why not? At the end of the day, this is the purpose in a way of this meeting as well. So thank you so much, and hopefully we will continue with these practices. We would love to have it, as Ms. Wadoui said at the beginning, offline, as a big meeting, you know, a big event in school, partly online for those who won't be able to join us. So definitely, definitely. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, everyone.